So solving absolute value equations. Let's take a look at the calculations first of all. So let's say we have negative 3 plus 2 and take the absolute value. So negative 3 plus 2 is negative 1. So the absolute value is equal to 1. Okay, so that's equal to 1. Let's take a look at this situation here. So everything's the same except for the negative 3 gets replaced by negative 1, and we do negative 1 plus 2 is positive 1. Absolute value gives us 1. So when we look at this calculations, there are two different numbers or inputs that will give us the same output of 1. Okay, so there's two different possible numbers that give us the same calculation of 1. Okay, well, looking at the same situation here, essentially, I'm going to change this into an equation where we need to solve. So let's change this into an equation where we have some number plus 2, the absolute value equals 1. Well, the answer is 1, yeah? Plus 2, absolute value. Well, we know that the answer to this, okay? So we know the answer to x here. The answer for x, well, from the previous calculations, I know that the x is equal to negative 3. But the x could also be equal to negative 1 because we see it here and here. So when we solve this equation, there are actually two possibilities for x that gives us the same calculation of positive 1. And we can see clearly what they are here. So how do we go about solving an absolute value equation? So how do I undo or solve? How do I do the opposite of calculating absolute value, but I want to be able to undo the absolute value. Okay, so again, we want to kind of think about this issue that we had before, this function issue. Okay, so we had a negative and positive, and if we input that into absolute value, our output was positive. Okay. So that's how the absolute value function works. But we should understand an inverse is just going the opposite direction. Instead of going this way, we're going to go in the opposite direction. So to undo or do the opposite of absolute value, we're going to input a positive, and we're going to get two outputs. There's going to be two possibilities for the undoing. And this is why, and this should seem now reasonable then, why is it that when I solve this, I get two answers? Well, it's because I'm actually going this way through the absolute value. I'm undoing the absolute value. Okay. So what do I have to consider? Okay. We have to consider that absolute value does something to positives and negatives. So we need to consider that there is a positive possibility, and that there is a negative possibility, and negative possibility. Okay, and I should change my grammar here. There are positive and negative possibilities. Okay, so and I'm going to put the 0 with a positive, although we could actually just as easily put the 0 with the negative. There's going to be a positive or 0 possibility and a negative possibility that we have to consider. This is what's happening when I undo or solve absolute value. I get our positive possibility and our negative possibility that we are having to consider. So this is important. So how do I algebraically do this then? Okay, well, I'm going to go ahead and solve this equation. This is what it looks like. Okay, so I start with my x plus 2 absolute value equals 1. To solve or undo, it looks like this. I have a positive possibility where the x plus 2 equals 1, the positive one. But the inside could have also equaled the negative possibility where x plus 2 is equal to negative 1. Okay, I'm just going to separate this here so we can... So here are two possibilities, and will these two possibilities give us the two solutions that we were looking for? Let's take a look. So let's solve the positive. So we're going to subtract 2 from both sides. So we're going to end up with minus 2 gives us x equals negative 1. Yeah, there it is. There's our x equals negative 1. That came from the positive possibility. X equals negative 3 comes from here. So I subtract 2 from both sides. I end up with the negative 3 solution that I was looking for. And we know that these are the solutions that we are looking for because we tested them at the very beginning. So this is what we're going to end up doing then. We're going to look at positive possibilities and negative possibilities.